And no matter where you are in the world, and welcome to another LinkedIn Live. And I'm really pleased, and this is where I'm not sure. Oh, I got that right. I'm really pleased to welcome Jo Causon, wrong hand again, to the session here today. Jo is the CEO of the Institute of Customer Service here in the UK. And Jo and I did a podcast a little while ago, really popular, really got a number of listens to it. And I was chatting to Jo afterwards, and we were talking about trends for next year and stuff like that, and what 2020, new decade, etc., etc. And we were talking about trends for next year, and we both went, and you know what, that would actually make quite a good LinkedIn Live. So welcome, Jo.
Thank you, Colin. Great to be with you. Great to be with all of your listeners, and looking forward to this session.
Good. So for those people that haven't heard of the Institute and you, Jo, perhaps you could just sort of introduce yourself and tell them a bit about the work that you guys do.
Of course. So my mum, Colin, frequently asks me what I do for a living and what we try to do at the Institute. So as the organisational professional body for customer service, our whole role is about helping organisations to get better at customer experience. And not because that's a nice thing to do, but because there's a very clear link between those organisations with higher levels of customer satisfaction and their long-term performance, be that higher levels of trust, higher levels of loyalty, but also higher levels of return, so financial return. So everything that we do, we're pan-sector, is to work with organisations through that training, qualifications, research, etc., to help them to get better.
Good. And correct me if I'm wrong, but if I remember from the podcast, you've presided over a large growth in the Institute.
We have certainly grown, and we're never complacent. But yes, over the period, we've actually doubled the number of members of a 10-year period that the Institute actually has. And I think that's about really organisations recognising in a highly competitive field that they're really, truly the only thing that differentiates you. People can copy products. People can copy services, but you cannot copy a customer experience. And that's the key differentiator. And I think more organizations are beginning to recognize that as a way of differentiating themselves.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's certainly taken some time, but I see that's absolutely the case. So, in fact, before we get into talking about this, let's ask people to perhaps let us know where they're from. It always surprises me how we get people from all over the world. So it looks like we've got Ahmed says hi to Jo.
Hello, hi.
I'm not seur where Ahmed's from. Fatima from Lebanon, Ahmed from Egypt, Stacey from Los Angeles, Jerry from Brazil, Jomar from Brazil, Valerine from Chicago, and Bachi from Algeria. So, and again, my usual apologies for everyone for getting the mispronunciation of their name. But let us know where you're from. As usual, we're going to try to make this sort of interactive. So if you've got any questions as we go, then please don't hesitate to ask a question. And don't get put off by the fact that Jo here is talking specifically about the UK. I think a lot of these trends are global trends. There are clearly going to be some that are specific to the UK, but from I travel a lot around the globe, and I see a lot of these trends that we're going to be talking here about today over the next half an hour happening everywhere. So I believe we got a few slides. I'm going to just put on the slides. I'm not sure, Jo, if there is.
If it works, yeah. I should have passed the next slide on, Colin, because I think every year the Institute is asked to look at what do we see as the big things, as Colin's already mentioned, going to be happening in the next 12 months. And I think one of the big things that we would start with by saying is that the world is clearly shrinking. And in terms of the customer experience, so many of the things which we're noticing in the UK, I do believe are probably being felt across the globe. Yeah. And there's so much opportunity, I think, for services. And actually, I guess this is one of the first sort of kind of trends in the UK. In particular, 80% of our GDP in the UK comes from the services sector. And as I've already mentioned, all our data is showing us that where organizations focus on customer service, about 26% of us as customers are more willing to pay more for a better customer experience. And it's very clear to me that there is a real opportunity both for the UK from the point of view of exporting our services, but also from people coming to the UK to really experience a service economy and to appreciate an organisations and the ability to be able to really deliver to brilliance in terms of service. So I think, we already mentioned this, products are copied. That genuine service experience, whether you are in LA or whether you are in the UK or anywhere in the world, it's those memorable touches that you actually hold with you. And if I think about, I've just come back from traveling myself from Vietnam. And the things that will stay with me were those interactions I had, the people interactions and the service experience. So I think no matter how much uncertainty there is across the globe, really that delivering a brilliant customer service has never been more important.
Sure.
And I think becoming more important, really, Colin.
And I think for me, the issue is I sometimes feel like it's people are trying to put the genie back in the bottle. So the issue of globalization has happened, and we're not going to retrench ourselves. And obviously, the internet has been a massive tool for commoditization, and you don't even know where your products and services are coming from now, because they could be delivered from anywhere, literally. But to try to think, well, actually, it's we're going to put this genie back in the bottle is somewhat naive, in my view.
And also, I would argue, in a world which is, as we said, shrinking, that opportunity to work across borders, to work across sectors, makes it much more exciting, both from a customer and a consumer point of view, but also, as an employer. So I think the breaking down of boundaries and thinking about, as customers, we don't see things in neat parcels anymore. We see things as an end-to-end customer experience. And the more that we can create that across boundaries, the better the experience for the customer, but also the better experience for the business and the people that work in that business.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what about number 2 on your list?
Okay, so in the UK, obviously, we've got something that is occupying us quite a lot at the moment.
Can you tell me what that is? Because I'm not sure. I haven't listened to the news today.
I haven't listened to the news, not at all, Colin. So we in the UK are particularly obsessed with this B word, which is the Brexit word. But also, we obviously have our general election coming up this Thursday. And probably for the first time in a long time, the UK is quite divided in our opinions and quite polarised in our overall position. So it's quite a challenging time. And what happens as a result of that is that provides quite a lot of uncertainty for our markets. And sometimes, if I was honest, a bit of an excuse for companies to go, you know what, we'll do nothing because we don't know what to do. And I would argue now is the time to be bold. And as we go into next year, even bolder, because, organizations are either going forwards or backwards. They're not standing still. And therefore, really focusing on the service agenda to try and drive that going forward is going to be more important than ever, because you need to find a way of differentiating yourself.
Yeah.
So even though we've got all of this uncertainty, I think actually that's a huge opportunity for organizations and us as customer service professionals to try and punch through that and be able to try and give some certainty to our customers.
Yeah, I agree with the uncertainty, and particularly in obviously the UK with Brexit. There's clearly, if you, and we're not going to get into politics, but if you clearly look around the world, there's lots of uncertainty around the globe with politics, and obviously in the States next year is the election as well. So I think there's uncertainty everywhere. It reminds me of a story that a film I saw some years ago, and this was an old sort of 1960s film where they had these two racing drivers, And as they had these racing drivers, they were like Formula One racing. They were racing around this track, and the lead car crashed, and the driver was killed. And as the driver was killed, the guy in second place carried on racing around and eventually won. He was being interviewed after the race, and he said, the interviewer said, when you saw that, the lead car spun out and the driver was killed, he said, did you slow down? And he said, no. He said, I sped up. He said, because I knew my competition would all slow down. Yeah, and he said that was my advantage. And I guess the analogy I'm trying to draw, it is here. Whether you're looking at Brexit, whether you're looking at recession, and recession will come. We just don't know when. It could be 10 years, and recession is going to come to all markets at some point. But I guess the key point is, with uncertainty, I always think that there's opportunity as well. And it's those companies that grasp that opportunity and don't dither and use excuses, etc., that actually get that advantage.
I also think that, and research that the Institute has done, is that we, back to this point about uncertainty, as a consumer or as a customer, what do we want? We want as much certainty as we can have. So those organizations that are transparent, that are open, that are honest, are clear, and be able to provide cut through from a very complex or difficult marketplace are the ones that are going to help the customer far more. And it's connected really to one of the other trends that I would definitely pull out, which is this whole area around trust and transparency. And this is a global phenomenon. We have so much data and so much information. So the ability to interpret that information in a way that is effective or useful for me has become even more challenging. So being able, as an organization, to be able to help my customers to get through that, understand that, interpret that in a way that is meaningful for me as a customer, that helps me rather than just selling me more things, has got to be one of the most positive things that we can do. And I think that will get more important, because as organizations, or rather as customers, we want to trade with organizations that are ethical, organizations that are doing the right thing, that we believe have the customer at the heart of what they are doing. And that is going to be a trend that I think will accelerate, which is also, and I'd be interested in what people feel about this, but very much connected to the whole debate around sustainability.
Sure.
And again, if you look at some of the data from the Institute, we do something called the UK Customer Satisfaction Index, as you know, Colin, and we've been doing it 10 years. And when we first started on this, very few people talked about sustainability, i.e. the importance of packaging or plastics, or where this product's sourced from, etc. Now, in each of those cases, it's much more important.
Yeah.
So actually, the supplier relationship, the credentials of an organization are much more important. And if you're not transparent with that, you will get found out. So I think another big trend will be you and I as consumers and customers wanting to buy from organizations that we believe are being open and honest, authentic, transparent, and sourcing things from an ethical base. And that is something that we're certainly seeing in the UK, but I think we're seeing that across the globe.
Yeah, no, I agree, and particularly around the sustainability and just the impact in the single-use plastics is quite amazing in the last sort of 18 months, and how everybody started to get on board with that. So let's do a couple of name checks, and then we'll carry on down the list. So we have Samir from Saudi, Natalie from London, Eric from Dallas, Kapil from Pakistan, Meritza from Mexico, Fanu from Paris, Elmer from Netherlands. So here's a question that I'm sure you get, because you're CEO of the Institute of Customer Service. So James Redding says he thinks that customer service isn't a thing anymore. and he's coming from the construction industry background. So we haven't discussed this, I know, but you know, this difference between customer service, customer experience.
Okay, so I think a couple of things. What is true is that customer service or customer experience is not a department or a function. And I think there's a big differences, I would say, between customer services and customer service. So customer services or servicing is serving the customer or servicing it, perhaps through a contact center, etc. However, being clear about the customers you want to serve, why you want to serve them in a particular way, and understanding the preferences of our customers and the journey that the customer wants to take through your business is proper customer service or customer experience.
Sure.
And the reality is, in any business, is you've got to be able to do both.
Yeah.
So, you know, you have to be able to understand your customer base, derive the right customer service strategy, be clear about what the metrics are that you're trying to ask, think about how you're rewarding and recognizing your staff. But at the same time, you've got to be able to execute, and the delivery of that is really important. So it's not either or. In my book, it's
Sure.
both. And
Yeah.
if you look at the UK CSI, what you see is those organisations in the top 10 of the UK CSI, the Customer Satisfaction Index, have been consistently there because they focus on things that really matter to customers. So the professionalism of their staff, how easy they make that customer experience, the product service doing what you expected it to do. If
Sure.
there is a problem, how well that is dealt with. But
Sure.
they also are thinking about how involved and connected do I feel emotionally connected to this organisation.
Sure.
And those things, I think. So I guess the simple answer is it isn't a department or a function or a thing. It's about how we do business. And
Yeah.
that's for me the real differentiator.
And I think to a certain extent, it's we debate semantics.
Yeah.
So you know, for me, it's customer service is part of an experience, and whether people want to call it customer service or whether they want to call it customer experience, you know, I'm not even worried. The issue for me is, are we trying to get the organization, and I'm now not just talking about a department, to focus on the customer, and that's the issue. I think the danger is we get into semantics and try to just stick labels on things. So,
and I'd agree with you, Colin. I think the important thing is about being clear about who you're trying to serve, you know, getting the basics right and the hygiene factors and that's hard, by the way. It's not easy to consistently deliver brilliant service.
no.
But also to constantly be thinking about how can I improve this?
Yeah.
How can I drive this forward? How can I make better connections? What sort of innovations? You know, and if we're thinking about you know, again, back to some of the trends. One of the things that I'm asked a lot about for a trend for next year, really, Colin, will be around the balance between human and machine. And you know, how do we get that right so that we make sure that we are really delivering
Sure.
a brilliant service experience, but it's also a very human service experience. And I think that is certainly many of the organisations in the UK are really challenged by that at the moment.
Yeah, and I think if we just go back to your list, I know we're darting around the list here, but I was just looking at and thinking, you know, we're talking here about a lot of that sort of renewal of the focus on organization culture, I guess. Yeah. We're also we've talked about the transparency and the sustainability, but we're also talking about, you know, just, well, what does work look like over the next few years? It always surprises me. One of the questions I often ask an audience when I'm doing a conference speech is, how many people think that business is going to get easier over the next 10 years? Yeah, and clearly nobody ever thinks it's going to get any easier. And I don't think it's going to get any easier. You know, so it's all of these things are just going to be complicating the business life over the next few years. In fact, let me pull in, because the good news is we've started a bit of a debate here, actually. So Derek Baker says that they differentiate themselves says that they have differentiated themselves but need to provide a better customer experience, which is good. Linda Parsons says demonstrating how you add value to your customers is critical if you are to differentiate. I think that's something we haven't spoken about yet, but absolutely. I mean, for me, it's both sides of that coin. And what I mean is you want to be adding value to your customers, but you've also got to make money at the same time.
Yeah.
So there's no point in just providing a great customer experience or customer service if you don't then make any money, because nobody's
And on that, and actually, Colin, on that point, I think it's a really important point, and I think it's one of the other questions around how do we, as customer service professionals, help people to understand the importance of customer service. And I think this the fundamental point that individuals need to do who work in the service arena is show the return on investment of customer service.
totally agree.
Because when we do show that, so just as a couple of kind of research geeky things here, I would share. I know from the research that the Institute has done and it's a long-term approach, but over a 5 to 8 year period, those organizations with higher levels of customer satisfaction in their sector, so above average in their sector, will have on average a 10% higher level of profitability, a 5% higher level of revenue, and also over 100% higher levels, so 114% higher levels of employee engagement and therefore productivity. So the way to really prove, I think, the economic value or the value of service is to demonstrate the economic value of it.
Yeah.
And also our research shows that, again, where organizations are brilliant, and you've got to be brilliant at it, it's not just about being average, but
Sure.
really strong on the customer service agenda. They will have, 50% higher levels of trust ratings,
Yeah.
40% higher levels of loyalty ratings.
Yeah.
So the economic case for why service matters, I think the more that we can help those of us in this profession to demonstrate that, and much of the research at the Institute, we spent a lot of time over recent years really showing that the link to productivity, the link to economic value. Because you're absolutely right. We can sit here and pontificate and say that customer service is really, really important, which we believe it is. But we need to be able to demonstrate that hard-nosed economic value. And the more that we can do that, then the better that will be.
I agree. And I think the podcast that we did, it'd be worth people listening to. We did a podcast a couple of months ago on some of the research that the Institute have done that was showing that effectively there wasn't that things were stagnating in the industry. And for me, one of the big reasons for that is that people are not focusing on the things that are going to drive value. And therefore the danger is, and here's my worry for the industry of customer experience, customer service, is that the CEOs around the globe are going to turn around and say, why are we investing all this money on the customer experience team or customer service? Effectively, and rightly so, show me the money. Where's the return? And if you can't show them that return, they're not going to support it. So,
yeah, and I think absolutely, and all our research shows that there definitely is a return. But the most important thing is talking in the language of the board, talking in the language of the decision makers, and really helping them, Colin, to position that properly. And again, do go and have a look at the website. And I know, Colin, you will give that, because we do quite a lot of work around proving that link, and our latest UKCSI. I think the other thing too, and this was another one of the questions I think from one of the team that's come up about sales versus service. And I could not agree more. We collect a lot of data about individuals and consumers, and that will be an ongoing trend. The ability to use artificial intelligence to collect, to make the experience better, but also to learn about how we service more. So we're collecting more and more data. The most important thing about the data that we're collecting as a trend going forward is not to collect that data to sell me more, but to collect that data to really work out how you can service me better. And those organizations that are smart about that and use data to service and to improve the service experience, I believe will get higher levels of brand loyalty and recognition going forward. So it's a really important point. We're not collecting data just to sell. We're
Sure.
collecting data to get better at delivering a better experience.
So let's, I think that was 80 that you're referring to on the list, aren't you?
I
Derek
am, yeah.
Blake, has said this is good stuff. Thank you, Derek. Much appreciated. David Dagger says a number of organisations for the construction industry are members of the Institute of Customer Service. More work needs to be done with organisations that procure construction work, however.
So
Linda
that's
Park,
about the supplier train and
yeah,
making sure that our choice around, and this is going to again links to the sustainability issue. You know, as a trend, a lot more people are asking about not just what this organisation is doing, but how do you treat your suppliers and what's the relationship like with your suppliers. So that's an important part of the quality control and the standards piece. And I think that again is something that will become more and more important.
yeah, no, I agree. And AD's just commented, CEOs need to be closer to what's happening on the shop floor. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. Typically, that's, you know, we all know that's not the case, and typically most organizations don't have that customer focus that's from the top. But here's the thing for me: if you show the CEO and the C-suite that this will generate money, through loyalty, etc., then absolutely they will back it, because that's effectively what they're there for. Elmar says, great discussion, convinced of the importance, but we need people throughout an organization to deliver it. From my experience, this is where the challenge lies. How do you get people in the same customer service mindset? And I'm just going to refer back to your list, because at the end of this, I will give the site where you can download this from, and Jo will give the details of how to get in touch with the Institute of Customer Service. But again, you know, for me, one we haven't spoke about is sort of this recruitment piece here, Jo. And how would you answer Elma's question?
I think it's a really important point, and therefore it does stem. It starts with the recruitment. We know that a lot of the time we are struggling to recruit and then to retain. So I think when we're looking at recruiting people, you know, using colleagues to help as part of that recruitment basis, so not just the management to do the part of that, using customers as part of the recruitment approach is also something that I think that going forward will become more important. You know, so employing customers to help you to actually do the recruitment. Things like psychometric testing and looking at profiling to see the link.
Yeah,
Because, you know, I often get asked, is customer service a nurture or a nature aspect?
sure,
And I think that you can teach customer service, but
sure,
actually you've got to be interested in it. You've got to
sure.
be connected to it. You've got to want to be able to solve people's problems or issues, which is what we're talking about. So I think there's a big piece around recruitment, being clear about what the job is, also being very honest. You know, often organizations don't talk about the challenges inside their organization. I would always advocate to say, these are the great things about this organization and this role, but these are some of the downsides of it. So having
Sure.
an honest conversation at the part of the recruitment, onboarding, you know, and what I mean by that, making sure that we really are training and developing people in the products and services that we are giving, and allow enough opportunity for that. Often people are suddenly thrown into the job at the last minute, expected to know everything. That can be quite frightening,
Yeah,
particularly if customers are more demanding than they have probably ever been. So the onboarding experience, and then culturally inside the organization, I think the most important thing is bringing people together, to get together with the different departments and help each of the departments to understand that actually we're all serving a customer. So it's not just the customer service department or function, it's not just the end of the chain here. Ultimately, everybody from the CEO all the way through the organization is serving a customer. Because if you're not serving a customer, then you're not going to have an outcome, which is what you would say, Colin,
yes,
or a business that you're actually running. So
yeah,
the internal links, the impact of invoicing late, the impact of the IT going down, the impact of, you know, not getting the HR right. All of those things are interlinked, and the best way of being able to demonstrate that, I think, is showing people people why their roles, whatever their role is, in whatever department, are fundamental in delivering a brilliant customer experience for the end customer, but for each other. Ultimately, I don't believe anyone comes to work to do a bad job. So the
No.
fact that we can make this, people feel that they are valued and actually making a difference to that whole customer experience, the better. But that means we need to sit down and really identify that.
Yeah, and I think I totally agree with everything you just talked about there. I think certainly getting the right people in the job. Here's the thing that winds me up, particularly in the call center environment, and I used to be in the call center environment, is when you go, yeah, we've got a new person joined, they're on 6 weeks training, and you say, and how much training do they get within that 6 weeks to talk, about customer service? And they say, oh, well, I think there's we do 3 or 4 hours on Thursday of the 6th week. So in other words, they're getting all this massive lot of training that's to do with systems and everything else, rather than releasing the potential of how they can deal with customers. Some people do it naturally, most don't, but you've got this big bell curve. You've got the people at the top here that do it naturally, but the people in the middle, if you just give them some training, if you give them some coaching, they can be really good, and people love doing that type of role.
I would agree. One of the things I think we'll start to see this year, we've spent an awful lot of money on systems and processes are important. And making it easy for the customer to be able to navigate us as organizations is important. But ultimately, we need to have much higher levels of empathy, much higher levels of problem solving skills, and much higher levels of communication skills. And for me, those organizations that properly invest and train and develop their people in those skill sets will be in a better place as they move forward. Because you and I, as customers, expect the process to work.
Yes,
What adds
absolutely.
the value is that human interaction that I might get, and also working out when I need a human interaction and when I just need a machine. And
Yes.
there's different reasons for different issues that I would need either or indeed both. But I think, a heavy dose of humility, a heavy dose of really listening. Am I really listening to what these issues are, and helping, colleagues to understand that actually we're all delivering to something much bigger and much more exciting than just our own little function or our department. And
Yeah,
those things, building a bigger connection as to the purpose of our organisations, is why I go to work every day, and I'm pretty sure why most people do.
I agree. So let me read the last couple of comments before we pull this to a close. Bakra said, how do you measure customer value creation with a customer experience? I tell you what, we're going to do a whole LinkedIn live on that, because in fact, you may want to look back a week ago. I did an interview with a chap called Dr. Simon Kelly, who's wrote a book on value creation, and that's worth listening to, and it's a topic we're going to return to. Philip said, previously attended our training. Nice to have you as a customer, Philip. It's all about being connected with oneself, customers, colleagues. It's one connection. It's not inside or outside. It's one connection, not inside or versus outside the organization. Totally agree with that. Says the client-facing touch points are usually managed by people with low salaries, and these are the ones fighting for their personal battles and expect to smile and delight the customer. Yeah, I don't think either of us would disagree with the sentiment behind that. It's quite ironic that a lot of people in customer-facing roles are some of the least paid people in the organization.
And I think that may change, actually, as we go forward. There probably a requirement for less people, but much higher order skills. So,
Sure.
as the machine starts to take more of the transactional, I think there's huge opportunities for more of a profession and more of a career in the service experience. But we're not there yet. But there
Yeah,
should be.
absolutely. So I'm conscious of time. The good news is we've had a really good conversation. We've had a number of people comment as well. So we've gone a bit over time. If people want to get hold of you, I know that correct me if I'm wrong, but these are the details.
They are indeed, and you can
on big screen for everybody.
Thank you, Colin. And, do go and have a look at our website too. So instituteofcustomerservice.com, as you can see there, because I'm pretty sure that you'll find, and I'll check in with my team, the last UK CSI report on there. There's got some of those links between the ROI, and there's hopefully some really practical things. Because for me, trying to provide professionals with practical advice or indeed information is really, really important as we go forward.
So great. Thanks very much, Jo. This has been a fascinating conversation, and certainly by the amount of comments that we've got, everybody else has found that to be the case. So thanks very much for your insights today. I'm sure we'll get you back on in the future. Don't let the conversation stop here. Just because we're signing off, please carry on with your comments. I will certainly be looking at those and responding to those as well. And on Wednesday of this week, we have Professor Ryan Hamilton's coming back, and we're going to be talking at noon EST again, talking about price imaging. So not a completely separate subject, but quite a fascinating subject about how you can change your prices depending upon the image of your organization. And actually it's a fascinating topic. But Jo, thanks very much for joining us today. And again, let me just put this up one last time for people to take a note of. I'm sure if they just Google Institute of Customer Service in the UK, they'd find it anyway.
They would do, but can I just say thank you very much, Colin, and to say thank you very much for all the questions as well, guys. And if the Institute can be of assistance, then we'll do our level best to try and help. And to wish everybody, from me anyway, as you get closer to it, a very happy Christmas or happy holidays when you finally get to them, guys. So Thank you, Colin.
Good point. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks a lot.